Well, thank you guys for coming in and joining this panel. It's going to be a good one. It's optimizing your leasing pipeline. It's a way to accelerate deals through the pipeline that we walked through this morning when Brandon and Nick kind of went through that funnel. We're going to talk a lot about that and kind of how the strategies that these guys, this wonderful panel that we have, are putting into action at their respective organizations. And really looking forward, I think we've spoken a little bit about what we'll cover today, and I think it's going to be a great thing. I think there's going to be a couple good points that you guys can all take back to your organizations and kind of put into practice. So I'll just go ahead and ask the group to introduce themselves, just your name, your title, a little bit about your portfolio at your organization, and for fun, where you went to college.
Okay, so John Olynick with Manulife Real Estate, John Hancock in the U.S. Our portfolio is 65 million square feet globally, predominantly North America, managed on behalf of our general account as the life insurance business, but also we currently have 4 active third-party funds with a few more to be launched in the near future. I oversee the leasing function for the global portfolio, so we're decentralized. We have regions that operate and manage the buildings in those specific markets where we're located. And where I went to school, we're based out of Toronto, so I live in Toronto, and I went to the University of Western Ontario in London, Ontario. Thank you. It was fun.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Zikakis. I am with the investment arm of CB Richard Ellis. It's CBRE Global Investors. I am the head of asset management for commercial properties for all of the U.S. So I've got a team of 10 asset managers that I work with. We're overseeing 140 buildings, and that's just about 36 million square feet of office, industrial, and retail. I've got a counterpart who handles multifamily, so I'm strictly in the other 3 food groups. Went to school at Syracuse and grad school at Columbia. So New York
guy.
New York, yes. And I live in California once I had a chance to get out of the snow.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Flory. I'm with Bentall Kennedy. We're an investment advisor. We have about $35 billion of assets under management. North America, Canada. We're headquartered in Canada for you Canadians. And the U.S., our portfolio is diversified, all 4 product types. We have a fund, an open-end fund. It's called MEPT, and that is the fund that I focus my time on. I do a bit of portfolio management for MEPT, and then I also do some portfolio management and asset management for a separate account. My main role that I spend probably 80% of my time on is they asked me to take on the asset management of 5 strategic assets, the 4 largest assets in our fund that all have either a redevelopment going on or repositioning required. One of my, I call my baby building in Arlington, Virginia is 250,000 square feet, had 75% of the building rolling, and it was kind of commodity space, and so we're trying to reposition that. I have done about 500,000 square feet of leasing in the last 15 months, and I have another 500 in the works that I hope to close out by year end. So, and I went to Bowling Green State University in Ohio. I'm a Midwestern girl. And I'm also, I like to share that I'm on the international board for Crew Network as well. I'm very proud of that.
Hi, Mike McDonald with Washington Real Estate Investment Trust. We're basically local, DC, Maryland, Virginia. Our portfolio is office and retail, about 8 million square foot, and then about 4,500 units of residential multifamily. I'm Managing Director of Real Estate Services. That's kind of just about everything that doesn't fit into a specific portfolio: construction, insurance, marketing, energy procurement, sustainability. And I'm actually a Hightower client, flipping over to VTS this weekend. And I am a school, went to a Maritime Academy in Massachusetts, and then grad school, Boston University.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We got a great group. I'm Matt Engfer. I see some familiar faces in the room. I'm a strategic account manager for a lot of our West Coast accounts, so I spend a lot of time in Los Angeles and San Francisco. I have quite the commute to go meet with Mark. But really excited to be here and talk about optimizing your leasing pipeline. I think, and also I'm a Florida Gator. It's a very important point. But so thinking about that funnel that we went through today with Brandon and Nick, we kind of wanted to talk about optimizing your leasing and pipeline and your pipeline through that funnel. And I wanted to kind of start off with the top of the funnel and how you guys think about the top of the funnel. What does that look like at your organization, and evaluating it, seeing if it looks good, if you need to do something with it. And how is that different from maybe 5 years ago or so? John, I'll maybe start with you.
Sure. 5 years. I've been in this role for almost 5 years. When I first moved into this role, our portfolio was about 25 million feet. So we've grown quite a bit. And it was just really on behalf of our general account, not so much for third-party investors. And we were using Lotus Notes, and we had an in-house built monthly leasing activity report, I guess, function that we had to update at the end of every month, so we can roll up our occupancy. We're sort of, our main objective in leasing is our occupancy. That's our plan. We set a year-end plan and objective for occupancy, in addition to NOI, obviously. But when we first started, everyone hated using this MLR. And I think I have another anecdotal story when VTS came along, but you didn't track it. At the end of in November, I'd look at what our portfolio occupancy was, look at what our year-end number was, and say, holy shit, we got to get another 150,000 feet, and I'd just start calling every region and say, what do you have? What do you have? What do you have? Can we commit that? Maybe is it going to be signed? Maybe we'll just commit it and hopefully get signed in January, to hit our numbers. So since then, things have changed quite drastically. Obviously, you can starting off understanding what your exposure is, what's rolling, what vacancies are coming back, what conditions should you get those vacancies in to minimize the downtime, what's your marketing program going to be, from a rate perspective, from an event perspective, from a capital perspective in the building, all of those things. So physically and then marketing-wise and price-wise, you can start to plan and get ahead of that. And then lastly, I can go on, but lastly, and then it's your pipeline. Ultimately, if, how are you going to market it, but how are you going to maximize performance and drive performance? And so that's really coming down to your marketing campaigns and getting the message out there. So top of line starts with the inquiries, the road shows, the tours, and then conversions, which we all know about, conversions to proposals, leases out, execution, etc.
Mark, that's something that you're really focused on, is kind of tracking the conversion from the top of the funnel down.
Right. So when I think of a top of a lease, first of all, our parent company is CB Richard Ellis. So I love brokers, and we see them as an integral part for the next 50 years and will never be displaced. So I got that out of the way. Okay.
We got it on film.
Is there anybody from CB in the room? Oh, okay, I'm sticking with that line then for a while. When we think of the top of the funnel, and here I'm talking about inquiries from qualified potential prospects, and then moving them to the tour stage, there's a lot we learn and we manage off of from there that we weren't able to 5 years ago. First, we didn't have clarity and metrics of how many times the phone was ringing and how many times our brokers were picking up the phone to talk to folks. And I'll say right off the bat, 99% of our deals come through the tenant rep brokerage market. So those relationships are really important. But we use the very, very top of the funnel for a couple things. One, it tells me how effective our marketing efforts are. And are we out with messages that resonate to the market, the tenant rep market, and to their clients? And then second, what kind of share of mind we're getting from our brokers? Because when I see that top of the funnel full, and there's a lot of conversations happening, there's a lot of proactive reaching out, it tells me that if I'm working with a landlord team who might be representing 5 other buildings, that I'm going to get a disproportionate share of mind from them. And I use that top of the funnel to really look at those 2 things. And when we compare and we stack rank and we look at number of inquiries per building and then number of tours per building, we've got built-in diagnostic right there that tells us, okay, go a level or two deeper, figure out what is the issue, and then solve it. Because at the end of the day, I look at the entire lease funnel, and I think there's really three ways to increase your gross leasing. One is to drive more qualified prospects to your property. The second is to convert more, and on a national average, I think we convert like 22% of the folks who tour. And then the third is to retain a higher percentage of the existing tenants that we've got. And so the metrics that we get from VTS allow us to track those things and then become actionable around solving problems or identifying problems.
Awesome. So a little bit earlier notification allows you to take action and then kind of drive that conversion. Jeanette, you guys have some interesting stories at Bentall Kennedy as well.
Yeah, so I take a little bit of a different approach to it since I crossed over from asset management to portfolio management. The big change for us over the last 5 years since we instituted VTS, and I can't recall, it was probably 3 years ago that we did. Our portfolio management people and our fund that I mentioned, it's an $8 billion fund. It has 105 properties. We have a big sales team that is out there trying to provide information to potential investors and provide information to current investors as well as consultants. What they are always asking us for in the asset management group is what's coming. Like, I got a lot of historical information, but I want to know what's coming. It's not that the salespeople can go out there and promise, 98% occupancy, but what they can do is they can temper their message to the folks that they're talking to. If we can provide them information on what's coming through the pipeline, we had the exact same process. That was the old Excel spreadsheets. They rolled them up. It was manual. Garbage in, garbage out. Something got missed. Things were tracked differently. You have the multifamily piece, which works completely differently. You're trying to blend all of that in. So what VTS has allowed us to do is to have a little bit more visibility in what's coming through the pipeline. We had, I think, 5 reports that I worked on with our portfolio management team for many, many years, and I've been with the firm 20 years in January, and I've worked on the fund for 15, so I've seen all of the changes of reporting. I think we had 5 reports that we did that provided the information that we can now pull out of VTS. I had a report that tracked percentage of renewals. So what percentage of renewals were being done out of all of the transactions that we did? Volume of transactions. That was good information in the downturn. We saw the percentage of renewals of our total transactions change dramatically, and we have a report that went back 10 years. We're not using VTS quite as well as I know we can, but we're definitely trying to push more towards the portfolio management use of it, which will give our portfolio managers who are out in the market, our acquisition people who are out in the market, we can provide them a lot more information. And it's useful for us too. I get every single information on every single property in the portfolio, just so I can keep an eye on what's going on. And so at my daily email, I can tell, our property in Chicago has had a dramatic increase in tours. We've had a little bit of challenge, I think, with some adoption by brokers. But for the most part, I think the brokers are finally getting there. And I liked some of the conversation about the hammer and, making sure that they know that they really don't have an option. And I think that the information that's coming in has gotten better and better as time has gone on.
That's awesome. It's very flattering of you guys to talk about VTS, but once you have that information, and I'm going to get to you in a second, Mike, don't worry.
Okay.
I'm not leaving you hanging, but once you have that information, how do you act on it to actually accelerate that pipeline? Like, you see your tours are light, or you're not converting at the rate that you need to. What are some examples of things that you guys are doing to make sure that you are hitting your numbers and getting to where you need to be?
I think It depends on the region and the building, the market conditions. I saw Alex from Calgary. Calgary right now is different than downtown Toronto, for example, right? So the market conditions. So you do look at vacancy rates, absorption rates, market comps, tenants in the market, and understand where the opportunities are, because there's some buildings or some ownership for some partners or some funds that are highly under a lot more pressure than, let's say, another location in another market. So I think it allows you the context to take a step back, analyze or interpret what's going on, and then it does follow, for us and for me, a follow-up call to the region, to the leasing director, drilling into the situation. Usually it can also follow up with a visit to the region, a market tour, a presentation. We were talking earlier. Sometimes if there's an example in Boston, there was a deal that they were recommending to do. I didn't necessarily love it, and they said, "Well, this is our first proposal in 12 months, but we're getting a lot of tours." And I said, "Well, that's concerning, actually. Why are we getting a lot of tours but no conversion to proposals?" So it allows you to actually ask those, peel back the layers of the onion, ask them more difficult questions. Is it the tour experience that's no good? Is it the path of travel that they're taking, where they greet someone? Are they greeting them in the wrong spot? Are they saying the wrong things? Does the building look like crap? When you get off the elevator, is there debris? Can't they open the door? Is the door different? There's a lot of things when you go. It's real estate, so it's a hard asset, which we all love. Data is great, but it allows you to, walk the properties and feel the market, talk to the people. I think those are some of the things that we try to do.
You spend your time more wisely on the management front. Mark, you talked a little bit about that previously, about how 5 years ago you spent your time in a very different way than you do today. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. 5 years ago, we were just trying to collect data to understand what had happened, and all the data we were collecting was really a look at current situation in rearview mirror. But we focus more and more time now, and somebody mentioned it the other day. I'm a big fan of Franklin Covey. One of their books is The 4 Disciplines of Execution, and it talks about when you're setting a goal and you're measuring your progress toward that goal, every month or every week that you get your stats, that's things that have already happened that aren't going to get you any closer to it. But if you're setting a goal and then you're managing the behaviors and the activities that you want your team to take, and the most crucial things that will lead to leasing success, then you're much more likely to be able to achieve those transactions. So where I spend a lot of time now, and again, I've got to leverage, because I've got 10 asset managers, the 130, 140 properties at any given time, and so put 2 leasing people or to even 3-person teams on that. We're well over 300 people who we're relying on to execute. So with my asset managers, I'm telling them, 1, this is written into your annual performance review. Not only are you going to hit your leasing targets, but you're going to do it by following 3 rules that I'm going to measure at the end of the year. Did you fully embrace VTS? Is everything logged, and is it the system of record for everything so that the data is fully transparent? And we came out with a mandate through our asset managers and our leasing teams that, real simple, 1 sentence: if it wasn't logged on VTS, it didn't happen. That drives adoption very quickly. And particularly when I get an email from somebody that doesn't come through VTS, I'll just ask them to restart, put it back through, and then I'll respond. It doesn't take many of those to get that adoption. So that's phase 1. My second phase is that every asset manager, not for what we call our challenge properties or our active leasing properties, they have to have a bulletproof marketing plan that spells out by month what they're going to do in like 10 different areas. So that becomes our action calendar. And then for asset managers, I want them personally involved in every transaction that's 20,000 square feet or more. And we talk about that. I want them away from the office, I want them on site, I want them in tours, and I want principal-to-principal communication. So the view the space, it becomes that mechanism to really coordinate those activities and make sure we're living it.
Awesome. So sounds like some good takeaways for the top of funnel. Use kind of data and real-time availability of these metrics to kind of direct where you're focusing your attention, freeing up the time on the things that matter most. As you kind of get further down the funnel, Mike, I know that we talked a little bit about the bottom of the funnel and how that can impact your ability to really win business, even when you're in the final stages of negotiating, making sure that you're operationally efficient and speeding up that process of closing a deal.
Yeah, and I think our company being smaller, and I'm not on the leasing asset management side, but I think what we're focused on is that velocity from that prospect to LCD. A lot of things that have to happen really fast to get that tenant in, and we can book that revenue. If we miss and slip on that, that's critically important. So what we've found is that, I'm going to still use Hightower until Monday. We use Hightower to make sure that, because Brandon's here and I know he's taking notes. But what we do is make sure that, we've got partners now tied into, we've kind of evolved. So we've got, for example, we've got our architect partners ready there with an at mention to feed that broker, and the asset manager's looking over the system, but to feed, BOMA square foot calcs, an LOD, a plan, core factors. That needs to happen very quickly. Legal leasing needs to be able to see what's coming at them. So we have a hybrid of outside legal attorneys. Some will be used for certain complicated deals. They are now on there as an at mention, if not real-time notification. My job is to make sure we've got those partners and that they are there and ready and seeing this coming at them, ready to get that lease generated. So we have the architects, we have our GCs, our construction group is also there kind of ready to go with, getting the GC partners ready. And we want to get that obviously in by that LCD, if not sooner. Then that's all about, the revenue there. So that's been a lot of what we've spent time on, is just making sure we can keep that velocity. Because being a smaller company and being REIT, we see every friction point, and we need to make sure that we're maximizing. As I said, the Hightower system, BTS, has really allowed us to tie in external partners and make this thing flow. And we're looking to grow, like everybody, and we want this to be a scalable platform, so we want to build those partnerships and the procedures. And I will say that every one of those partners has a funnel themselves. The architects have a funnel about intaking, GCs, and so you need to understand and work with them. So you need to talk about structure and procedure. Now, you want to talk to a broker or an asset manager that came from a broker background. If you want them to go right to their phone, talk about structure and procedure, and that just, they're gone, they're done. But that needs to happen beyond, through the process to get these partners to work well. So to me, that's been our focus, is leveraging that platform to ensure that we can get this thing flowing and people have visibility and see where there are some hiccups and they can respond quickly.
Awesome. So operational efficiency matters a lot to kind of getting that revenue in the door. We focus a lot on it as a software business. We track a thing called CAC, which allows us to track customer acquisition costs and our time to make that money back. It's a lot. We spend a lot of money investing in our software, and we want to make sure that we can collect on the revenue that we need as a business to grow as quickly as possible. And we focus a lot on those operational metrics as well. Do you guys have anything that you kind of focus on towards the bottom of the funnel?
Yeah, I can, and we're starting to focus on this a little bit more now that we have full use of VTS and more understanding. We have, obviously, with a portfolio the size of ours, we have very large tenants that come through the pipeline. We have very small tenants that come through the pipeline. They all have varying processes that they go through to get to an LOI. Generally speaking, once you hit LOI, there should be sort of a maximum time that it takes. Certainly on your 100,000 square foot leases, they're going to have their own process and probably work through their own time frame. But what VTS allows us to do is really look at the time frame from that signing of LOI until the lease gets signed, and to try and determine whether or not that there's a holdup in the process. Is it our attorney? Is it our time frame to turn around comments? Is it the asset manager? Not for me, hopefully. I have a 48-hour turnaround time unless one of the tenants I have right now that we're working sent 85 comments on the lease. I'm not going to turn that around quite in 48 hours because I'm sitting here right now, but I'll probably hit 12 hours after that. So that's something that we did not have access to at all before. I mean, you would have to have someone storing the information in an Excel spreadsheet. We just didn't do it. We didn't have the resource to do it. Now we have the ability to look at that, and we can look at it across property types. We can look at it across markets. Asset managers have to add some value by telling us what's going on in the market, but if you have the data and then you can overlay the asset manager's perspective on it, you can have a little bit better sense of how you can improve that timing. Every single day a space is vacant is money we never get back. And that's, we keep reminding the asset managers, don't get the last nickel. Get the last quarter, but don't get the last nickel. If that space is vacant for one more month, you just lost probably 8 cents. So move it through, get it done. Think about the likelihood of something happening that you're stuck on in the negotiation, and move on and get the lease signed.
So we talked a lot about the last 5 years, right? We said it was the Stone Age. Now we're able to focus on the things that matter. We're able to move things through our pipeline at the bottom of the funnel very quickly. But you saw the numbers out on Nick's presentation: 5.8 billion square feet on the platform. We talked at the happy hour last night. I talked with a lot of folks about other CRE tech companies popping up, coming in, pitching, asking for your time. Take me through the next 10 years, because when everybody's using some sort of digital leasing tools, what does that program look like for a best-in-class, kind of experience at an operator?
Well, we're living it right now because I've been tasked to lead the digital leasing and asset management task force to figure out what that looks like. So it starts with organizing a meeting and trying to create a vision or a mission statement, what that can be. I think if we all think about what a digital leasing platform, best-in-class owner, operator, manager would look like, and what does that entail, we might all have different ideas, but just real simply to try to put some context, I think it's an end-to-end leasing experience, right? So from being able to walk into the lobby of a building with your iPad and give a tour, email your flyer, the floor plan, maybe a virtual tour, draft a proposal, send a templated proposal, go to leases, have accounting input the information after the deal is signed digitally, upload the documents, the deal documents. In theory they could be digital, so there's nothing to upload, but you upload that and have your approval process occur throughout every step of the deal stage. That's an idea. That's sort of what we might get to. Everyone on iPads and paperless, virtual tours, augmented reality, all the bells and whistles. The floor technology, being able to flip that to your client or your prospect so they can, tool around with the floor plan. So, what it looks like and how we get there. I mean, just earlier in the portfolio management session, I learned quite a bit about what's out there that I didn't know about. So it's going to be more confusing to try to figure it out, and working through, a big company like ours with, procurement, IT, and project managers and things I'm not very good at navigating through. It's going to take some time, but the beauty of it all is somehow we were able to adopt VTS about 1.5 years ago and get off of our old system, automate, get our leasing people in front of the customers, not doing these reports that no one looks at once every month. So we've come a long way, and one other thing I'll just add to that too, that we all look at daily or every deal, is the impact on value, cash flows. VTS calculates that. Hightower, I'm sure, calculated that. Whether it's an Argus integration, whatever software we all use. Those are some things that we're trying to figure out and think about. I think that would be all encompassing. So anyways, like I'll just stop there.
Yeah. Any other special efforts that he didn't mention that you guys are kind of digging in on right now to get ready for that?
I sort of feel like we're moving into this age of more data, more transparency, and folks are going to have access to this great information. And it's interesting. When I talk to Nick and Ryan and Brendan, and I see the way View the Space is evolving, I'm fielding calls at least once a week from somebody who has a different point solution that's designed to revolutionize the business. And we're quickly, in my mind, we're outpacing the pace of technology is outpacing our ability to keep track of it and to really be able to mine all the nuances within the technology. So when I look at View the Space, I mean, everybody's going to have it, right? And it's a really sophisticated software system. So I think when I look at that and I look around the room, the winners are going to be the ones that are able to get the most out of that system to be able to differentiate themselves in their value offering and to create something really compelling that the data won't necessarily capture. What is it like to be a tenant in one of our buildings, and why is it different than the great buildings that are on all three sides of me? And then I think too that what happens is we're going to get better and better and better at customization. We're going to spend more time at the very front end where we're going to really dive in, try to understand who the best qualified prospects are for us and who we have the best chance of success with, and then to really spend time customizing solutions for them. And technology enables us to do that now, and we are. And the wealth of data that's available for us to go in and really do a deep dive into a potential prospect, and then, again, create a unique experience, because I've been in many a tour where I'm the 6th or the 7th or the 8th in a list of tours that have occurred during the day. By the time folks get to me, they're glazed over, and we have to do something that differentiates us from the rest. And I think it focuses on really understanding who our ultimate clients are and creating a solution that works for them.
Can I just add something there? Because something occurred to me when you say that, because the information, the data, everything we're doing, but real estate, from the first tour, when the company tours the building, it is still a people business, and we take a lot of pride in the tour experience. So it's, I actually got to be the client once and flew to London because our office there was doing something, and I was on a tour, and that was a best-in-class, great experience for me, because it was, in the downtown, in the city, the financial district. And I learned a lot, and I think for all of us, as much as we're talking about leasing and pipeline and conversion, it is a good tour experience. To get the space, the building, everything properly prepared, know where you're going, what you're going to say, what you're going to touch on, be crisp, and all of those things. And I think that helps differentiate yourself, as you talked about. Know the building, the architect, when it was built, what's going on in the building, recent improvements, amenity space, know the audience and how to conduct that tour properly, I think helps convert from that inquiry tour to proposal, hopefully.
Well, I have a couple of things on future technology. One is a technology that's been around and is related to VTS. We have a building that I handle. It's a 1 million square foot office building in Washington, D.C. It is largely GSA. It's 3 buildings altogether. All 3 buildings have magnetometers. We cannot get brokers through that building very easily. It doesn't show the best experience. So we had VTS come out. We did some spec suites. We videoed the spec suite. We did what we characterized as a click and stay. We sent it out to 300 brokers. We did a video of the property in the area along with the spec suites. We included a number of space plans for some vacancy that we had. We sent it out to them. They clicked. As long as they went through the whole thing, then they got a gift card sent to them. We had very good response. We actually have one transaction that's working on our spec suite that came out of that. It really wasn't that expensive, and it was a way for us to get people in a building that was not accessible. The reason I say that could be more important in the future, security, it seems like it's increasing, not only cybersecurity, but there are more and more tenants who have issue with people coming through their space, looking at things. So if you can have a nice video of a space that's built out, even if that tenant happens to be moving out, say in 6, 9 months, 12 months, you can still send that out to prospects. You can get that to them before they come. Maybe they're not local. I mean, we see such a global industry. You're really working with people who aren't local. A lot of folks relocating. That has really helped. I think the one trend that I've seen that I think is still new, we work with a group called Neoscape here in New York City, and they're helping us with our advertising campaign on one of my buildings that I handle here. It's 101 Greenwich. Used to be 2 Rector, if you know it by that name. So we're doing a $100 million redevelopment on that building. Neoscape is taking virtual reality to another level, and they're one of the firms across the country that I think is the most advanced in this. You have your 360 camera that people use in multifamily and that type of work. But what they're doing is they're taking our building that right now is gutted, except for the 30% that it's leased, and they are building our spec suites on the computer. And this is really coming off of the gaming industry. That's really where the idea started. So they're taking that technology. And for gaming, he walked me through this in the last couple of weeks. For gaming, they're not really worried so much about details. If you're in a car and you're driving, some motor freeway, you don't care about the trees and all of the details that are on the side. But for purposes of sending this information out to a prospective tenant to show them a space that doesn't yet exist. And this is really fabulous for the developers, and I think even, again, for spec suites, or if you have people coming from a long distance, if you can get that information, then it can be used. You can do the glasses where you can send it to them, they put it on. I don't know how many of you have actually seen this technology. Wow, not very many, a few. So we're looking at it for 101 Greenwich. I'm excited about it. I wasn't aware of it at quite the level that Neoscape, I think, is doing. There are a couple of other firms they mentioned that do a really good job of it here in New York City, but we did select them. And I think that's one way that, again, for development or for a building where you want to get information out before the space is ready, it can really be beneficial to help your marketing campaign start earlier, and again, shrink that time frame where the space is sitting empty and you can't collect rent on it.
I just want to also add that I think Hightower did to me was made me an addict about SaaS systems, and that they did it so well that I think it was so painless that we went and bought Subscribed Honest Buildings, because it's just amazing what we can put in the phone or a tablet for the asset management. So I believe we're, like someone said earlier, we're in the first inning, and I think voting and signing up for these subscription services, I think just will continue to push the market to, somebody converges one or two of these or integrates them. That's going to happen. I think we'll all be looking back and laughing about, the first inning and what we went through. But, and then of course there's always the IT, which focuses on the care and feeding of that big accounting system, which every 5 or 10 years gets $1 million or $2 from the company and takes a big step forward. But I think from the business side, when I look about supporting the asset management team and recruiting young talent, want to make sure that we're not behind. We don't want to be ahead, but we want to be right there by keeping up with what is easily off the shelf, with some, relatively painless. At least so far it's been with Hightower and Honest Buildings. So we can put that information at the fingertips of our decision makers.
That's fantastic. Any other thoughts that you just want to go? I want to get to some audience questions in a minute, but anything that you wanted to add?
I just have one thing. If our portfolio managers could have anything, they want the one page dashboard that they can pull up on their iPad when they're wherever they are with a client, a potential client, looking at a potential acquisition. Am I overweight in Washington, D.C.? You know, what if I pull this building in and I know I don't have anything being sold? Where am I? How does they want that information? If I hear it, 10 times a year, I probably hear it 100. They want that information they can have walking down the street, and it's not there yet.
Maybe a follow-up to that. Do you guys have dashboards that you like, that you've customized? And if so, what are the key metrics you like to have on it?
There's two that I use because we're kind of comped on hitting our occupancy plan for the year end. So I have a report that looks at month to month what our occupancy is by region and by building, what the year end number is, what the pipeline is next to it, and using proposals or level 3 deals, putting a 20% probability on that, and leases out maybe an 80 or 90% probability on that. I can forecast how I'm tracking to hit my year-end number, whether I'm below or above, and then I can also add a pipe, and then also what the current pipeline is. So if I know I need to do another 50,000 square feet by year-end in a building, and whether it's comprised of 2 or 3 or 1 unit, and my pipeline's 50,000 square feet, then I need to have 100% batting average. If I know historically from VTS, because we've been on it for a while, I know last year my conversion rate from tours to proposals to executed leases was 1 in 5 or 20%. Then I know I need to have a funnel of 250,000 square feet to try to land and arrive at that year-end number. So it's funnel pipeline management, and I just add a bit of a weighting to proposal versus lease out to sort of forecast how we're tracking to hit the year-end number. And then secondly, one that I really like is our vacancy aging report. So I look at every vacancy across the portfolio by region, by building, and how long it's been on the market: 0 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 18, 18 to 24, and 24 and over. By size, we heat map it, and then we're just building this out. But then a little drop down on condition of the space: is it shell? Is it tired? Does it need work? Really, just a generic sort of drop down on condition. Is it encumbered? What's the trying to drill into the reason? And maybe it's a vacancy, a chronic, vacancy issue because of market fundamentals. But it allows you at a high level dashboard to see where your big laggards are, and then drill into what is our plan. We have a leasing plan, like you have your marketing plan, and then that's when you go to the region and say, we need to put a plan together. What is the plan? So that's.
We have a software, and I can't remember who the original vendor was, but CoStar bought them out recently, and we basically customized that. We call it Link because it was the 3 companies that used to run the trust, and that's our dashboard. Some of the challenges that were mentioned in the portfolio session earlier are that the information needs updated. We have instituted a process where, and it all pulls out of MRI, which is our accounting software. We have instituted a quarterly asset review where they have to review pretty basic information for every single asset, and then we do an annual asset review. That has helped with the quality of the information. I love some of the reports that come out of it. It's still some of the challenges with the accuracy of the information, and it's not as user-friendly as some of our portfolio managers need. Sorry, portfolio manager. David?
Evan Cantor, everybody.
I actually have a question on renewals and how you're tracking the data. First, I'll make a statement, which is, I think we're of the opinion that as owners of real estate, you take for granted the fact that you have a tenant who's already in your portfolio and they're going to renew. We think that it costs more money than anybody on the investment sales side when we're going to sell an asset will underwrite to you for. We think that they're sophisticated and smart with so much transparency that you're going to give them every bit of abatement or pretty close to what you're going to give to a new tenant. When you're tracking your renewal probability, you mentioned it, going back 10 years. Are you using that on your reversion analysis to try to, make a concrete argument that you're retaining 85% of your tenants?
We're trying. One tool that we do use to try and help make that argument is Kingsley, who's been doing tenant surveys for years and years and has an amazing database. And they have actually done the analysis based on all the data they get from all the owners, saying that if you have a Kingsley index score of a certain level or higher, you have a higher probability of renewal. And we've provided that information with all of our appraisers. The fund I work on, we value the assets every quarter, annual appraisals and then updates. And so we have tried. It's difficult to get them to value it. You do get pushback. If you have an asset that you've held long enough, and we're a long-term hold, so we had, we sold asset 002 and asset 003 5 years ago, and the fund was started in 1982. So we have a lot of good track record, a lot of good history that you can pull. Far easier to pull off VTS now than it was. It was all manual before. You can try and make the argument. It works sometimes, it doesn't other times. When you do go to sell the building, I think if you have a nice, good history of the occupancy of the building, I think you can use that to try and convince them at the end of the day they're probably going to underwrite what they're going to underwrite, but it doesn't hurt to try.
Yeah, we have a hard time. With our brokers, we hear the story, you're 60% under market rent, and the tenant, you're not going to give them any TI, you're not going to give them any free rent, and you're just going to take them from $24 to $48, and we're just like, we don't believe that story.
That's how buildings sell.
That's the whole thesis behind why you should do it.
But we beat that up on the acquisition, so, it's safe to assume that you're gonna have a hard time believing it on the disposition. So, thank you.
What's the, the percentage of deals that are done, that are brokered, and the role, just picking up on some themes from earlier today, the role of the broker, has it changed with, what's the, just the role of the broker, the percentage of deals that you're doing with technology data, is that sort of changing within your respective portfolios? What's your reliance on the brokers as it pertains to your pipeline?
I think our reliance is 100%. So very, very rarely is a deal coming in unrepresented by a tenant rep broker. And we're continually looking for nirvana, which is for our landlord brokers to go out and to find deals before an ultimate user even knows that a problem or opportunity exists. With that, though, it's still, most everything migrates through the tenant rep system. Key for us is our message has to be out there continually and be fresh. And a lot of my coworkers know the story, but my dad was a car dealer, and every weekend was a different sale, because, and same with mattress dealers, right? It's when you're in the market and when that need arises that you're looking for the opportunity. And if we don't have a message, the right solution out there, and great space to show, we're not going to be relevant, or we're going to be trying to play catch up into it. So we have embraced the tenant rep broker. Eve, what do you think? 100% of our, well, I take it back. Probably 90% of our messaging goes directly to tenant rep brokers, but then once we've identified who that tenant prospect is, then we're real big on, intensive guerrilla marketing and follow-up to the specific user. But we bring the tenant rep broker along with us, include them in everything, because if we feel like if we lose that trust with them, or if they feel we're trying to go around them, that we'll shoot ourselves in the foot.
I think we use them all the time, tenant rep for sure. We'd love to say that we have great tenant retention strategies, and our property managers and our leasing people and our regional managing directors are in front of our tenants, and maybe can do a renewal, transact a renewal without our tenant rep broker. That rarely occurs, but we do track it, a regional top 15 tenant list by size and by expiry profile, and then try to track again. We're not on the eye level yet with the TRM, but anyway, where that can all be sort of automated and on a fingertip right now. Everyone has to come to head office to sort of say, hey, do we have this tenant in our portfolio? Maybe we use the same lease language or some of those things, but generally it's always with the same with brokers.
I I would like, and maybe VTS does this and I just don't know it. I would love an alert to go to the asset manager and the broker potentially, when a new tenant is input that we already have in our portfolio. Thank you. I just haven't done it.
If there's any other good ideas like that
I haven't
one,
gotten any of those.
throw it on
notices.
the board out front. I don't know if you guys have spent some time, but we want your sticky notes there. We're shipping those features. We're prioritizing appropriately, so I'll make sure that one's on there.
I need to find out why I haven't gotten one of them.
You can definitely do that.
Because I am negotiating with a tenant right now that we have in our portfolio.
Okay, we'll have to take a look at that. Any other questions, Julie?
So this morning on the panel that had the 5 C-suite gentlemen, there was an interesting point that was brought up, and I wanted to put it to all of you, because I know in your roles, obviously, having a tenant ready to go to leases, you want to compress that time period between when they're in leases, get the space built, and get them in and paying rent. And one thing that was brought up this morning was simplifying the lease itself. And the 2,500 square foot tenant having a 50-page lease, it does seem ridiculous. And then I get very involved in the acquisition side and the due diligence, and just the time spent on abstracting the operating expense sections and getting that right. And if you could simplify that piece of it, it just would seem to accelerate getting those tenants in and paying rent. And I just was curious if anyone in the group or in the organization had decided to take a look at that.
We have.
You have?
We have. So a few years back, we created a short version lease for 2,500 square foot tenants. We put some parameters on it. It's not as short as I would like it to be, and we did an industrial version as well. And I think that's worked fairly well. One thing that we are doing here and in the New York area is we're doing annual increases in lieu of operating expenses on a lot of our spaces that we have in the market right now. They're even doing that on larger tenants. I think some of the language that we took out was just over-lawyering. I still think we could shrink it by taking out some of the things that are unlikely to happen, and with that small of a tenant, if you're, again, talking 2,500, 5,000 square feet, the chances that they're gonna hardball you, negotiate you on some of these things if something bad occurs. And I think it's just cutting back on the detail of some of the sections rather than deleting sections. And you know, our attorneys obviously don't like it. But I do think it will help. It will cut back on legal fees and speed to lease. And I think also brain damage at budget, sale, you know, business plan time frame. So we have done it. We still have a lot of room. I won't say we're perfect. We probably need to revisit that again because it's been over 5 years since we did it.
And if I can just add, and I think you may have touched on this, Jeanette, was that I think everybody wants that. And I think the pressures that were helpful for us to do the same thing was the liquid space, the WeWorks. Look, if we can't compete, if they can swipe a credit card and get them in, you know, so that was very helpful. We needed a catalyst because people have been asking for the short-term leases and all that, but we finally had some market pressure to apply and got, you know, everybody legal and insurance on board. So
we experimented with something kind of unique a couple years ago, and we were really big on spec suites. And we had a property in Chicago that the market was telling us 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. So I built 52 spec suites for 240,000 square feet. It was insane. But we realized even our short form, what we call a spec suite lease, was a little onerous. So we took that down and we created basically an apartment lease, and it eliminated all the definition of operating expenses. You had one gross payment, and then that gross payment increased by 2.5% or 3% a year, whatever you were able to negotiate against. But what was interesting about it is we went back on this one particular building and went back and looked at what our risk really was in doing that. We went back 10 years, and over a 10-year period, the bumps in real estate taxes was choppy. Some of the other expenses were a little choppy, but we averaged less than 2% total OPEX growth over that time. So if you're dealing with a 3, 4, 5,000 square foot lease, it's 5 years. There's the risk you're taking in something really strange happening that drives up your expenses is so limited. It wasn't even worth talking about. When we exited that building, it didn't even raise to a level of concern, and we weren't sure how a buyer would react to it.
The tenants will probably pay more for the certainty of what they have to pay.
And what we found too, the secret to selling it was an A and a B option. To be kind to the tenant rep broker, here's what you asked for. Here's your net lease, annual tax and operating expenses. Here's what's, we gave them everything. But we said if you just want to simplify it and go to B, the lease is an extra 10 pages shorter. So.
Standard or institutional, right?
Yes.
For VTS. Great. So I think we all took a lot from that. That was awesome. Thank you guys so much. I think one is, if it, like we said earlier, if it's not measured, it's not going to be improved. So that operational efficiency that they were talking about at the bottom of the funnel, making sure that those deals get through in as efficiently as possible. You need to just constantly put pressure on that, measure it. And at the top of the funnel, just keep an eye and make sure that you're acting on what the data is telling you. Does that sound good?
Great.
All right. Thank you guys so much for taking the time.